I suppose that there's use cases where it's not as consequential. So, for example, we've talked about things like insurance claims and driving. There could be life or death decisions we're asking the AI to make. But what about if I've just bought my new Samsung TV and I'm having trouble setting it up, and I go onto the Samsung chatbot and I'm asking it questions about how to set up my television. In that case, surely we're going from the useless chatbots that we've all experienced when trying to interact with customer service in the past to a generative AI system that should, in theory, be able to answer any question about that product.
You mean it will generate everything that we've told it about the product?
It,
So
or,
this
or
term generative
exactly.
AI is really misleading, and it's intended to be misleading. What I will say is this: let's look at narrow versus broad AI. If I have a television set with 50 settings and however many possible combinations, that's a narrow case, and the more narrow your case, the better AI works. So top of the list, RPA, let's say, if you need to read a bank statement, if it says 1,000, there is no chance you ever wanted to read anything other than 1,000. It does that well. If you want to know if 1,000 is good for you or bad for you, that depends on your business. It doesn't know your business. So ask yourself, how routine is this process? How much human intelligence does it need? And the bigger the answer is, the smaller the use of AI will be in that case. The other thing to remember is that AI doesn't have to stand on its own. The thing that I really like is the use of the term augmented intelligence. Now, your human being looking at those two cars may not know what a tail light costs. The computer will. So if a human being had to see that picture and say, hang on, it's been awarded total loss. No, edit that bit out. Oh, that's the price of a taillight for that car. Go for it. Working together, human beings are very good at understanding and flexibility. They're very poor with memory. We forget a lot of things. So on the same vein, computers are very good with memory and very poor with other things. So let's take diagnosis. In one of our chats, it was brought up that somebody had some rare tropical disease. No doctor in the city had found it, but ChatGPT worked out what it is. A lovely story. Nobody tells you about the 2,000 people that got into ChatGPT and it speaks complete rubbish and kills them, because that's not a good story. But I will say this: if you go to a good doctor who has studied for 20 years, not 4 minutes on Google, and they also refer to ChatGPT, it might remind them of an illness that they would have overlooked. Yeah. So wherever you can pair the two up, I'm a big fan of full self-driving, as long as in my car, if I'm driving and I start slipping lanes, my car rattles. It warns me. Mm. And I like that. Sometimes it warns me when it shouldn't, but I'd rather be warned when I shouldn't than start drifting. Mm-hmm. And I think it happens to everyone. We don't realize, but it does happen to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a huge case to be made for modeling for insights.
So that sort of means that if we have a very narrow data set that we can train the AI on, then it should essentially be reliable. Like the television example, how to set up Wi-Fi on a smart TV shouldn't actually be that complicated. There's only a few variables where it may need to ask you, have you checked this or have you checked that? Whereas if I was actually going to the American IRS and asking them about the deductions I can make on my tax this year, then you may well find that even though there is the letter of the law, and there's probably a 2,000-page volume that describes the tax law of the United States, but then there's all of the kind of human variations and what different tax lawyers would consider acceptable. So then you introduce the human element into the law itself. So it seems almost impossible to be able to train a bot to answer those questions because there's a certain variability there.
So, look, first of all, I mean, just on the specific case of law, a lot of laws are deliberately phrased with loopholes. So one has to accept that. And they're intended to benefit certain people in society that they don't really want it to affect. And people who don't know the loopholes pay full tax. We've all seen, I mean, we all know that the super rich pay a fraction of the tax that normal people do. So that's a start. But you say using a narrow AI, but you understand that to train any AI, you need a lot of data. So using the standard algorithms, if you want to make it too small, you kind of run out of talent. If there isn't enough meat there, and it's catch-22, what I would say is this: make sure that's not a great subject for a large language model, because in the definition of it, it has to be large. You want, we have large language models, we have expert systems, we have predictive systems. They're all a little loosely defined. But check that you have a system that A, works, B, doesn't need $50 million to find out if it works, C, doesn't only work for you. I need to go into that one for 1 second. My sister's house has no switches in it. You talk to the house. Now, switches would have been a nice backup, but no. They're ugly. Now, my poor mom, God bless her, is a very mature Bulgarian woman whose English never quite got there. And she's standing in the kitchen and she says, "Alexa, the lights." Bing! I didn't get that. "Alexa, please, I've been here 3 weeks. Just switch off the lights." Bing! I didn't get that. Now, it only works for the people who made it, who are Anglo-Saxon, white, with a certain accent, etc. So just be careful when you buy it or when you invest in it that you're not the only people it works for. And lastly, if it doesn't work, have the courage to put a stop to it. Don't fall into this trap of saying, well, it works for most of us. Well, it works, but keep yourself a fail-safe. Keep the switch there so that you can always fix it, which is the human in the loop.
So
There's
this
nothing
is
wrong.
No, I was just going to say this sounds very much like one of the problems of bias. Then, so it can only be aware of what it's been trained on. So, for example, if we are running a human resources department and someone says, "Look, here's a great AI system that can scan all those thousands of CVs you've got arriving," and then you tell it, "Okay, well, I need a great software engineer." It will essentially not find any software engineer that doesn't look like one that's already been there in the system in the past.
Again, like I said, it can't originate. It also cannot understand factors that you have not given it. So it doesn't know that you've been running I mean, there's a documented case of this. One of the biggest companies in the world, who are one of the biggest AI specialists in the world, canned it. They just threw it away. That's brave and honest. And publicized the case, which is also brave and honest. But you have to understand, even if you ask ChatGPT to write you a piece of music, it's got nowhere to get it from but the music that came before. You will never get something original because it doesn't even know what music is. It knows music is word number 800. It goes kind of into the 800 zone. You add a few more words, it goes into a couple of zones and cobbles together what it thinks you will like to hear from what it has seen. This has nothing to do with thinking. Certainly not with understanding. So narrow models, get the right technology, don't overspend on a proof of concept. And the other thing is scaling. These things very often work well in small quantities and don't grow nicely. So facial recognition is a great example. When they do the demo for you, it only has to decide if it's Mark Hillary or not. But afterwards, it has to decide if it's Mark Hillary, Adi Hazan, or 50,000 other people. And that's when it fails.
Yeah.
So make sure that you're not shown something that works only when it works and fails all the rest of the time.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I suppose this is why it feels dangerous for police services to be using this kind of technology, because although it may work 99.9% of the time,
No, Mark, I have to interrupt you. It does not work 99.9% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Facial recognition on a good day works 80% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Out of the James Bond movies, it doesn't work. The system that was rolled out in China that monitors the whole population does not work. Sorry to say it. And a system that works in China will not work in Africa, and a system that works in Africa will not work in the West. Mm-hmm. And it's almost impossible to believe that all these people are selling stuff that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Your Apple works. It recognizes your face, but remember, it only has to know if this is your face and not someone else's.
Mm.
So that's one tiny decision that it's gotten good at.
Mm.
So sorry to interrupt, but again and again, we've all been trained now to say it works 98%, it works. It really doesn't. And the reason that the EU has banned facial recognition in public is not because they want to be do-gooders. It's because countless people who had done nothing wrong were being arrested and detained incorrectly. And not one or two.
Well, and we've been talking about the limitations. And I think that, clearly this is what executives that are thinking about this technology need to understand is where are the limits and what should they be wary of. But what are the kind of use cases then where it really does work effectively? I mean, what are I suppose the companies that you've been working with? Because I've seen a few examples of some very good actual projects that have rolled out using AI. But I think to your point, quite often they seem to involve a human in the loop somewhere. It's always about augmenting what a human does rather than completely handing over to an AI.
That's exactly it, Mark. Believe me, please don't think I'm sitting here and saying everything everyone's made is trash. Because it's not true. And really, what they've done is half a miracle. First of all, you are using it all the time. Like I said, when you touch your phone screen, it's calculating where you want it to press. You're not that good. No, none of us are. But really, if you're going to sit around like War of the Worlds with your other directors and look at each other and go, the problem is, of course, the humans. Dun, dun, dun. It's not that way. The humans are very good, and you're not going to be getting rid of them anytime soon. And anytime somebody tells you that something is going to disrupt the whole way you do business, just look at the last 50 years of your life and think how much was disrupted really. Not a lot.
Yeah.
Basically, the video stores and the post office are gone. Everything else, much the same. Self-checkout, catastrophic. Self-driving cars, no. The algorithm that recommends stuff on Netflix, my word, these people are impervious to shame. But that's why you come in. You sit there and you say, yes, that, no, that. So human-augmented intelligence works all the time, works well. And we help each other and we work together. We're not You shouldn't be doing any projects that you think are going to replace a team. I've never seen a project replace a team. I've never met anybody who says they have. So maybe it's time to be more realistic and more human-centric.
Mm.
We do have our weaknesses, and these machines can improve our weaknesses, which is great. But they're no substitute, and they will never be.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a company that I've worked with in the past, and they are one of the largest customer service advisors in the world. And they rolled out a new system recently where, traditionally they would have a big contact center full of people that are receiving calls and emails. And so the email team would have to just literally sit there and read every email coming from a customer, formulate a response, and then reply to that customer. And they put a sort of an intervention in there. So the emails come in, but then they go through the system, which then highlights to the human agent, here is the main point of this email. This is the customer problem. So that kind of goes right to the top, even if the customer has written 500 words. And then they will have 10 sort of standard replies, and the 11th would be having to do a bespoke response. But if they just hit reply number 3, then the system will actually create the reply for them. So you're kind of automating the whole process, but keeping a human right there in the middle of the loop as well. And that seems to work really well. There's huge percentage increase in productivity.
Wonderful. I mean, that's exactly the kind of thing where you're using computer, not intelligence, but abilities, and human decisioning and intelligence. That's the perfect kind of combination, and that's what we should be headed towards. But when somebody comes to you and says, all you're going to do is dump all your spreadsheets here and it'll know what to do. It doesn't know what a spreadsheet is, doesn't know what you do. So it's very easy to differentiate between, fiction and reality if you know what you're doing. And again, I agree with you, Mark. There are countless process automation, mathematical modeling, predictive modeling, and it can save people from all sorts of meniality that really is beneath a person. I mean, why should a qualified doctor have to sit and read every email and decide if they're going to go to A&E or to a doctor or to some other practitioner? And not just a doctor, it has to be a senior doctor. When you can triage a third of them, great. Give them the difficult ones, great. And free them to see people. So those are the places where AI is tops. Augmenting people, improving their quality of work. You don't need. So I had a client that they're a telco, and they used to download reports of every cell phone tower, and engineers would sit and read these reports looking for problems. Horrific work. They had to pay them double and a half the going rate. No one lasted more than 6 months. So you've got constant churn. It's a terrible job. Now, what do? They train little bots to read these things. The bots only alert them to the problematic ones so that they can think of the best solutions. And they have free time to make more bots and start checking better and better. The outcomes of this project were phenomenal. Didn't have all the glamour that the driverless car had, but it works.
Yeah, but looking for anomalies is a use case that can work really well. And I mean that's like network security, whereas you used to find that a company that had been hacked would only find out about it a month or 2 months later, once the hackers have been in there and emptying out all the sort of data that they want to get their hands on. And now you can actually just sort of apply some bots to scan your network and highlight whenever there's any kind of unusual activity.
Oh, you don't need to be a detective. If I'm your sales analyst and I'm logging on in the middle of the day from my workstation and asking to read up all the sales file and analyze them, it makes sense. If I have a brand new user logging on at 2 in the morning trying to upload all the sales data, if we were applying any natural intelligence, we would see it immediately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, this is not a matter of some ungodly power that will look at all your numbers and find stuff. It doesn't exist. You know, there was a huge project done in the US long, long ago where they looked for correlations between all the products. And they came up back in the day with a correlation between diapers and beer. Then someone had to make up a story to prove that it was right. And the theory became that young dads, when they get sent out for diapers, grab a few beers on the way. And for 10 years, diapers and beer were always put next to each other. But there was no correlation. It's just if you run enough correlations, one set will be positive. So people who don't know statistics spent a fortune, wasted a fortune, and achieved nothing. And really, if it doesn't make sense to you as an expert, be very, very wary of trying it. Don't say, oh, don't worry, the car knows what it's doing. It's going to miss that truck. Because unfortunately, it's not.
Do you think that what we really need is a new type of digital literacy that encompasses some awareness of AI beyond? Because it seems that our education at the moment is just coming from the mass media, which is almost entertainment. Every AI story in major journals is always accompanied with a picture of the Terminator or something. So, it seems that we used to talk about having Excel skills on our CV or email skills, and yet now basic digital literacy, like using email, is just completely accepted as what any professional can do. So do you think
but
that
AI prompts is a new skill?
well, exactly. Are we looking at another whole set of digital literacy then?
No, we're not. It's going to end up bad. It's going to end badly. I think what's needed is a wave of honesty. It's for Elon Musk to get up and say, we promised it to you 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago. I now don't think I'm going to pull this off. We have the finest mathematical minds of our generation sitting, working out how to make people click on internet banners. It's time for my industry to reclaim a bit of its dignity. Galileo wasn't killed so that we can make people click on banners. Pull yourselves right, people.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, it's going to come anyway. And if it comes against our will, if it comes and we're not leading the story, it's going to be much worse. So, Cruise now, the company, there've been countless articles that have been pulled off the road. This is huge damage for a company. It could have been avoided with a little bit more honesty and a little bit better work and a few more delays. But unfortunately, they're under pressure from Tesla. Everyone's under pressure from everyone. There's all the noise. So yeah, we are going to have to, and that's why my message is what it is. Let's just use common sense. Let's release products after they work, not before. This notion of fake it till you make it is actually a terrible, terrible thing. It's all well and good, but this poor 19-year-old girl, Elizabeth Holmes, is now sitting in jail with 2 kids out of jail. Henry Kissinger's $5 billion are gone. No one has benefited here.
Yeah.
And if somebody does come up with a way to test but better, they will be dealing with skepticism.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people need to wise up before they end up in jail.
Yeah.
And I think that companies need to litigate when they get ripped off. It's embarrassing to say, look, we spent all this money and got nothing, which is what you have to say in a lawsuit.
Mm. Yeah.
But it's becoming time to defend ourselves as well.
Okay, so a final point then, because we're sort of coming to the top of the hour, and I think that maybe it's worth just summarizing that sort of key point, because every business is different. You talked about Theranos there trying to completely reshape blood testing. But, you know, a bank is very different to a healthcare company, an electricity utility is very different, or a retailer. I mean, how do executives in a very wide variety of different types of company imagine what they can possibly do with AI then? Is it really down to you? The possibilities are endless so long as you can actually see it working first.
The possibilities are not endless. Human creativity is endless. I mean, we have to go back to common sense. You know, we're busy rolling out into 1,000 retailers in the UK. And they don't rush to do anything. They do something small, they test it. If it works, they grow it a little bit. And after 2 years, everyone's getting impatient except me. I'm sitting there. Oh, that's how you should do it. And they will pay us if we work at step A, they'll pay us to go to step B, but never beyond that. And they're ready to pull the plug at any moment. That's mature, stable thinking. And banks are doing an excellent job. I mean, you're not going to roll into a bank with some weird AI and create havoc. Or if you do create havoc, very often the bank doesn't mind. In other words, if you make a mess of the call center, they're delighted because they want you to go online. Yeah. So there's a lot of creative destruction happening as well. But yes, I think a lot of companies are doing this maturely, slowly, carefully, and watch what you buy and make sure it makes sense and works on scale, not just in small.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
but yeah,
common
there are
sense.
great advantages to be had.
Yeah, common sense and making sure it works. I guess that's a great way to wrap up.
Yeah. Humans are okay. You are not as dumb as they're telling you are. You're probably a good CEO, and you probably do know better than the machine what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Go humans.